This is our first robust month-long celebration of Women's History Month. We have over 30 films, feature films and short films, returning favorites and brand new films, and 6 events featuring local and national luminaries, women that are leading the charge in activism, business, empowerment, arts, and culture. Viewers can access the Women's History Month programming through our app, which is available on a number of different platforms that you can watch on your TV, on your computer, on your tablet. What this is a celebration of women in all of their diversity, looking at their successes, their victories, but also focusing on the work that still needs to be done, the challenges that are facing women today.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Maureen Post. I am the Director of Strategic Partnerships for Milwaukee Film, and welcome to our final week of Milwaukee Film's 2021 Women's History Month program presented by Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin. All throughout this March, we have been screening over 15 films complemented by panels, events, and discussions dedicated to amplifying female voices and illuminating women's experiences. This, unfortunately, is our last event of the month, but we are very honored this evening to have a conversation with Sophia Chang, moderated by Shalina Ali. On that note, I would love to recognize tonight's sponsors, Tempo, CUNA Mutual, and Madison 365. We've also had incredible community-wide support going into this event. We've had a lot of people able to read the memoir, engaging around it. So I'd really love to thank our community partners, Social X, Elevation, Professional Dimensions, Boswell Books, OCA, Dance, Meet on the Street, and the Rev Collective. Also note that this is our final event, but the films are still available for the rest of the month. So both films, 93 Queen and End of the Line, The Women of Standing Rock, are available for this week only. So I would check those out first. But then you're able to watch everything on the virtual platform through the 31st. So then on to today's event. We have a really unique format this evening that incorporates film, memoir, and conversation. So we're going to start by watching the short film, Ozzy, Defining Moments, Sophia Chang. And then stay tuned for an intimate conversation with Sophia and Shalina. Sophia will also read excerpts of her memoir as part of that conversation. So sit back, watch the short film, and then stay on tune.
If you ask Asians in the creative space if their parents can describe what they do, no. What does that mean to manage an artist? The gift that hip hop gave me was expressing myself in a way that was raw. Wu-Tang helped give voice to my anger. I am now an author. I wrote a book. My story speaks to the world. But the people that I most want to impact are women of color. What I am doing with any of these ways that I'm telling my story is cracking open the world's imagination on what an Asian woman can be, what a single mother can be, what a middle-aged woman can be. My daily existence is an act of defiance.
The most extraordinary lives follow undefined paths. To find your voice, you may need to journey into the unknown. I'm Carlos Watson, editor of Ozzy, and these are Defining Moments. get a hug or a shake?
You get a hug.
Nice to meet
Hello,
you.
Mr. Watson.
Thank
Nice
you
to
for
meet
having
you
me in your
too.
place.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
It's an Asian household, so you have to take off your shoes. I don't, though.
Oh, you don't, but I do.
Yeah, kind of. That's how it goes because mine are clean and I'm a woman and I get to keep my shoes.
Do you know what? Your house, your place. I'm
Thank you.
loving it. I'm doing
My
what
rules.
you're doing.
I appreciate it.
That's great. Hi. Thank you for having me here.
I'm so excited that you're here.
Now you're not a New Yorker, though.
I'm not. I'm from Vancouver, but smash cut into New York. Hip hop is kind of my first introduction to it.
What would have happened if you had not gone into hip hop?
Oh, I don't think I would be the same woman I am today. If it wasn't for Wu-Tang, I wouldn't have the kids I have today. I simply don't know what my life would have looked like had I not gone into hip hop. I was born and raised in Vancouver, child of Korean immigrants. My mother escaped North Korea. She left behind siblings and her parents. She never saw them again. And she met my father at the University of Seoul. They got married and they came to Vancouver probably in '64, and I was born in '65. Where I grew up was almost exclusively white. So I faced lots of overt racism. I got called chink, I got called Jap, I got called gook.
My sister put a lot of energies into wanting to be assimilated, especially I think in the high school years.
Every image I see of beauty and power and sex appeal is whiteness. I was ashamed of being Asian for not just a little bit, but for a long time when I had to talk about my parents' names. That was embarrassing. Listening to my parents talk with heavy accents was embarrassing. When people came over and they smelled our food, it was embarrassing.
There was a period when she, I think, was kind of reacting against family traditions, sitting down at the table together, which was very important for my family, and eating Korean food. Sometimes my sister would see what my mom had cooked, and then she would make herself a grilled cheese sandwich. It created a lot of tension between her and my father.
I was always defiant, and I was angry. And hip hop showed me how to fine-tune that anger and to own it. The first time I heard Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, the first time I heard the message was such a light bulb moment for me.
It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under.
In retrospect, I believe that the reason that it resonated with me so deeply is because it was people of color taking control of their own narrative.
How old were you?
I was 17.
I do remember her being very excited when she first discovered hip hop, and I could tell that it was more than the music.
If you're the child of immigrants, most of us were raised to take safe jobs. My father, God rest his soul, a math professor. My mother, a librarian. My brother is now a tenured English professor at Vassar. There's no doubt that I was supposed to be an academic. There was nothing academic that really stimulated me. Hip hop just opened my eyes like, oh my God. I was so anxious to get to New York that I skipped my graduation from university. University of British Columbia is where my father taught. It's where my mother worked. It's where my brother graduated from. And then their daughter's like, I'm just gonna go. That was probably really disappointing for my parents.
Unhappy with the future her parents prescribed for her, Sophia rejected her native culture and would forge her own path, motivated by the need to create her own identity.
My sister lived in a tiny loft right above the subway.
I just fell into the scene. I got ensconced. And it was just this world that was so new and vibrant.
I was in graduate school, and she would make me hip-hop tapes, and they were fantastic. Big Daddy Kane, EPMD, Public Enemy, Leaders of the New School.
This is a letter that I sent to my brother June 8th, 1988. Not much to write, but here are the tapes I promised so long ago. I started writing a song-by-song analysis of the hip-hop tape, but that'll take me a while to finish, so it's forthcoming.
So I used to visit my sister fairly often, and she took us to these clubs that were playing hip-hop music. She was at the eye of the storm.
There were these three promoters. They had this brilliant idea to have clubs, and they named them after chocolate bars. Payday is the one that I remember the most. There was also 100 Gram Bar, there was Mars Bar, I think, and they would move from spot to spot. Like, I remember one, I'm pretty sure, was at a Ukrainian hall. One was at a deserted Chinese restaurant, and it was just such a sense of adventure. There was no social media, there were no cell phones, so we would just get the flyer and call each other up. Oh my God, it's gonna be here, it's gonna be there. It was like going on like a wild goose chase. It was awesome.
One of the people that I met in New York was Sean Karasov, this surly Brit who was doing A&R Jive in New York, and he was moving to LA. And he said, Sophie, I think you should come and interview for my job. And I was like, really? Wow, okay. I went and I interviewed with Barry Weiss, who was the president of Jive, and he told me later, he said, the minute you walked in the door, I knew that you wouldn't get the job. I'm sure Barry had doubts about me because I'm a woman, I'm Asian, I'm Canadian, but after an hour and a half of talking, he gave me the job. And I asked him recently, I said, Barry, why did you give me the job? And he said, because you were so deeply embedded in the scene that I knew that you would be a good scout. Rico Wade and Ray Murray from two of the guys in Organized Noise, CeeLo, 40, Gip, Joe, historic.
I had the good fortune of meeting Sophia through some mutual colleagues, and I was taken with Sophia immediately. She's such an incredible force of nature. I mean, there's no doubt Sophia was a fish out of water. I mean, hip-hop and that world was misogynist, but she just was super enthusiastic, very knowledgeable, and she was fearless.
Were you the only Asian?
I was the first. I was the first Asian woman. There were other Asian men and women that came after me, but 87, they're not like I was in there and not working. So were there other Asians in the clubs? For sure. But I actually had a formal position as an A&R person, which was pretty striking. When I was at Jive, I did A&R, which means I'm the talent scout. And it means that you're getting a whole bunch of demo tapes and you're listening to them, and a lot of them are garbage. And the Wu-Tang demo, 3 songs, Protect Your Neck, Tears, and Method Man. I remember putting it on and going, wow, what is this? There were 9 of them. 9 MCs. I mean, that's crazy. That didn't really exist like that at all. So there's no way Jive would sign them. Loud ended up signing them. But I was still so excited. I was a Wu-vangelist. I was playing that shit for anybody. I was like, listen to this! I knew that I wanted to meet RZA. I knew that he was the brains behind it. And I got a meeting with him, and it was the summer of '93. He was gangly and taller than I'd expected. He greeted me with,
Peace, Soap.
We went down the street from Jive to Locks Around the Clock for lunch. I then grilled him with questions about the Klan. He told me that most of them had met in Staten Island, which they called Shaolin. RZA had a unique worldview and clear vision for the group. When we parted, I thought, that's one of the smartest motherfuckers I've ever met. As I walked north on 6th Avenue, wondering when we'd next meet, he called out,
Yo, Soap.
I turned quickly.
Next time, lunch is on me.
And immediately, they take me in. You know, come here, Soph, you're with us now. I went to the studio and I had met Method Man, and he rushes me into the back room and he says, Sophie, you gotta come here, you gotta watch my video. I just got the video for Method Man. And he shows me the video, and sitting across from me and watching me is this guy. And when the video's finished, he says, where are you from? Now, any person of color can tell you that that's rarely a question, it's a statement. It's saying, who the f do you think you are? Because you don't belong here. Before I could answer, Meth just flew in between us, and he yelled, that's Sophia Chang, and she's down with Wu-Tang. Never disrespect her again. On the one hand, I'm getting, you don't belong here, this is for you. But the flip side of that is here comes Matt saying to him, this is for her. This is her home.
She is our family. Growing up as a yellow girl in a white world wanting to be white, I didn't really belong. Growing up being raised by Wu-Tang, I belonged perfectly. So in the process of working at Jive, I think what I discovered was that I'm a hustler, that I love looking for opportunities. So I met somebody who worked at Jive. She did marketing and I did A&R. So those are two sides of a record, right? And so it occurred to me, wow, I have both sides of the coin here. I have me as a talent scout and I have her as a marketing person. We should combine forces and start a company. And we did. Michael, who was the head of A&R at Warner Brothers Records, gave my partner and I a consulting deal. But then the first person that ever asked me to manage him was Old Dirty Bastard from Wu-Tang. And then I was managing RZA, and he was the first person to ever ask me to general manage a label, Razor Sharp Records, and I was the GM. Hip-hop embraced Sophia Chang, but Wu-Tang claimed me.
Sophia Chang is the yin to our yang, sister. Sometimes she's in the sisterly spirit with us, mother. Sometimes she's in the motherly spirit. All these different female characteristics at different times, you know, Sophia has been able to be towards the clan.
It was interesting and exciting to see my sister discovering her Asianness through hip-hop. And it coincided with her relationship with Wu-Tang Clan. It was sort of a perfect storm.
Wu-Tang's infatuation for Asian culture was really intriguing to me. Wu-Tang loved Kung Fu movies and the themes that resonated so deeply with them. Loyalty, brotherhood, oppression, few against many. I didn't think, well, this is weird for you as a Korean to enjoy these Chinese movies. I loved it. All of Asia draws so much of its culture from China. I think, you know what, I want to study Kung Fu. Me and my girlfriend Maria went all over Manhattan looking at different Kung Fu schools, and they were all kind of trash. And then we heard there was a Shaolin monk teaching Kung Fu, and we were like, no way. I walked into the temple, and I just knew that this was my destiny. Yuanfen, the Chinese call it. So I go and I study Kung Fu, and who becomes my master? 34th generation Shaolin monk Shi Yanming. Once I met Yanming, I went home that night and I called my parents and I said that I met the man I'm going to marry. But we were master and student.
I didn't speak that much English that time. She didn't speak Chinese, but, you know, from the first day on, she was very focused and very dedicated.
I started training more and I just started hanging out with him more. 5 months after I started training, we were together late one night and he kissed me. This is me and Yanming. We were so in love. So many pictures like this of us hugging and kissing. The first time Yanming and I made love, it was in this little room at the temple. And it was so titillating because it was at all levels, you know. Of course, it was physical, it was carnal, but it was also spiritual and emotional and psychological and everything all at once. It was amazing.
That's a sexy story. I mean, that's just a sexy story to say I fell in love with a, like, 34th generation monk.
And he shaved my head.
I did shave her head, and in Buddhism, shave her head means shave all the terrible things out of your life.
It was, for me, just the reason to take my devotion to Shaolin to the next level. Shaving my head, for me, is representative of non-attachment. It's a central Buddhist tenet of non-attachment. The way that my head feels after I've shaved, it just feels so good. I'm rubbing it all the time, like a fat Buddha belly. And it just reminds me to just release. Can't be attached to things, just release. We became really serious really quickly. There wasn't really much of a courtship. It was just, okay, this is what we're going to do.
Was that considered at all like taboo to be
be dating when you were students?
That's a fantastic question. Everything just comes natural, you know? Yeah, everything comes naturally.
When Sophia began to train with Yan Ming, she was certainly devoting all the energies she had put into the music industry, into Yan Ming in the temple, trying to raise its profile, trying to get Yan Ming into commercials and films, introducing celebrities to join the temple and train with Yan Ming.
1995, Wu-Tang Clan are at the height of their popularity and relevance, and I introduced Wu-Tang to Shaolin and Shaolin to Wu-Tang. RZA never said no to the temple. Every interview, every appearance, he was always there. And then I got Yan Ming simultaneously on the cover of the 4 biggest kung fu magazines in the world. Yan Ming, I would say that other than the movie stars, was probably the most well-known martial artist in the world. Eventually, I made a hard right out of the music business.
I do remember her telling me she was walking away at a moment when she could be making a lot of money, but she just couldn't do it. She found her next passion.
Never looked back, never had a regret, never sat there going, should I, shouldn't I? I just knew that that's what I was supposed to do, but that's who I am.
This was her new partner, and they were embarking on having a family. She took all of that ambition and poured it into helping him build his business.
My decision to leave hip-hop had nothing to do with what hip-hop was doing. It had everything to do with what Yan Ming was doing.
But that's Sophia. Anything she commits to or gets involved with, she's going to give 1,000% to.
Just as quickly as she left Vancouver for hip-hop, Sophia was ready to keep it moving once again. Her pursuits were now being driven by a desire to be a part of something greater than herself.
You know, you fall in love with somebody, and you don't think you could love more. And then you have a child.
I was so happy and thank Buddha, thank God, and blessing into my life.
I always knew that I was going to have kids, always. But being a mother is the most defining identity of my life. God, Christmas is so soon, isn't it?
Yeah, do you want to get a tree, by the way?
Do you want a gift?
No.
Okay.
Well, I mean, why did I say no? Yes, I want a gift. Yeah, but...
Well, I already got you a gift. Oh, no, you paid for them.
Yeah.
No, who paid for them?
Dad.
I paid for them.
Grandma, no way.
Oh, Grandma.
She also
You're talking about the hoodies?
The hoodies, yeah.
No, Dad paid for those.
Oh, we did?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, true.
Watching Yan Ming as a father was amazing. It was amazing. He doted on the children. I never told you guys there was a Santa Claus, did I? Did you guys ever believe in Santa Claus?
I think I suspended my disbelief up until there was a tag on something.
Oh. But I wasn't like the whole thing about Santa Claus and North Pole and the reindeer and stuff like that, right?
No, I don't think you're like that about anything.
Wasn't I just like, look, there's no such thing as a fucking tooth fairy. You're gonna fall asleep, I'm gonna put $5 under your pillow and
No,
you're
she
gonna wake
actually
up.
did used to say that.
I did, I
That's
said
kind
that.
of messed up.
Around when the kids were 2 and 4 was when the fissures started to show. And a lot of it was around just kind of how we were raising the children. And Yan Ming and I had different parenting styles. I was kind of more the drill sergeant, and I was more the disciplinarian, which is ironic considering how harsh the discipline was that he was raised in. You know, I wanted to let them cry themselves to sleep, and he couldn't stand the thought of that.
You so describe Sophia as mother. Every young woman born in the West and just a little bit different, like who was born in China. Yeah, just different way to approach.
I think that our lives were so enmeshed, professionally and personally, and then you add children, and it was just impossible to sustain. I found condoms. That was the moment that I knew the writing was on the wall. This was looking at my life and him getting immersed into my world and meeting all of my friends. You know, he defected here from China. He didn't have a big social scene. And so my friends became his friends. And of course, they loved him to death. How could you not? There was no moment that brought on the end. It's not like I caught him in bed with somebody. It wasn't that at all. Death by 1,000 cuts. It was just an erosion.
like so many marriages.
The relationship between Sophia and Yan Ming had deteriorated to the point that myself and my girlfriend at the time were actually advocating for them to break up. It had become so toxic.
He met a woman, he flirted with her, they exchanged numbers. That's acting single. That's cheating in my mind. It's not physically cheating, but it's emotionally cheating. If we were just a couple, I would have just left, or he would have just left. But you have children. The calculation is totally different.
We try to improve our relationship. We try to sit down and speak, talk each other, try to figure out what's their problem. Let's fix the problem. And you see each other every day, even diamonds, you don't see that shine anymore.
It was a good 3 or 4 years that I was in therapy.
To my traditional Asian parents, the idea of separation or divorce, especially when children are involved, seemed to them, like a catastrophe.
You never imagine a relationship not working out when you fall in love with somebody because you're just starry-eyed. But I tried and I tried and I tried, and finally, I realized you've done everything you can. It's over.
This is Yan Ming in his abbot's robes. The abbot is the head of the temple.
Walking away from Yan Ming absolutely meant walking away from the temple, because that was a cult of personality, cult that I helped build. Sure, that was a low point in my life. Sure it was. I felt undervalued, I felt underseen, I felt betrayed. But it was eye-opening. There was one time that I went back 3 months after I left Yan Ming in the temple, and immediately these two of his disciples, 2 men, like 6 feet tall, walk up, and they just stand in front of me like bodyguards. And I'm like, you see this place? I built this fucking house, bitch. That was 10 years ago.
We talk not that often. Sometimes, if generating some problem. Maybe sometimes talk is good, sometimes don't talk, even better. Life is you have to figure out when it's good time, when you can communicate to open the road, open heart, open mind. Hey, Sophia. Cold?
It's so cold. And you're always so warm.
Yeah. Nice, huh?
Yeah. It looks even different than when I was here last time.
There's some cleaning.
Yeah, like the chairs are moved.
They're more around things.
It's more open.
Yeah.
Good.
Pretty, huh?
Yeah, it looks great. It still looks great.
Nice.
Altar looks beautiful.
Pretty, huh?
Yeah, it's all good. Okay, I'm gonna get changed.
Okay.
Those were difficult times, both emotionally, psychologically, and financially.
When I left Yan Ming, I left my job. And I had to pay for everything on my own. I have a rent now. I am paying for the rent as opposed to splitting it with somebody.
This dress ice. Take it.
Thank you.
Despite her best efforts and intentions, Sophia's life was taking another major turn. But for the first time in her life, she faced a future filled with more uncertainty than enthusiasm.
I was barely making any money working at the temple as a nonprofit, and I was broke.
You went somewhere for a second there when you started thinking about that.
About
being broke.
And about being broke, yeah. It was, I think the hardest thing for that, of course, is that I had children.
She never once asked to borrow a nickel. She had too much pride for that.
I'll never forget missing the bus. And I was late for something, and I had to be there on time, and I was forced to take a taxi. And I got in the cab, and I started crying. I was so stressed out. I was like, I do not have $9.50 for this cab. I'm not somebody that gets down very easily. I'm not somebody that goes home and cries herself to sleep. I'm not somebody that can't get out of bed because I'm so devastated by something. I am resilient. I am powerful.
When Sophia left Yanming and also left the temple, she had to, in some ways, start from square one.
I absolutely didn't think about going back into the music business. At that time, the music business was kind of in a really big state of flux, and a lot of people were out of business because of mergers. So the first time this notion ever crossed my mind was my mentor, Michael Austin, and started running a management company with the legendary Nile Rodgers. And Michael said, I'd like you to run the company. And I said, why me? He said, because, Soph, I've never known anybody as good with talent as you. So Michael and I worked together, and the biggest client we had was Raphael Sadiq. And working with Michael was a dream because, you know, Michael could get anybody on the phone. You know, I could never get the record company president, the president of Columbia Records on the phone, but I did kind of all of the day-to-day stuff. I read all the contracts, we talked about every deal. I didn't make a move without him knowing, and we really worked as partners.
She at times can be overly aggressive. She can be a bit of a bull in a china shop. There's no doubt about that. She knows it.
Again, I'm a little Asian woman coming up in hip hop. I'm surrounded by men. There's so much testosterone. And you know, there's a way that I present it and a way that I had to maneuver.
Raphael at one point decided that he no longer wanted her as part of our management team.
Raphael has the dubious distinction of being the only person who's ever fired me as a manager.
He just felt she was too aggressive. I actually think he made a mistake.
I think that if I was a man, he probably would not have felt that way. And that's when I realized I spent 30 years of my life helping men tell their stories.
I think the huge pivotal moments was decision and confidence to decide she was just going to completely be her own woman, that she was never going to have a job again, and that she was going to be in the Sophia Chang business.
Do you want me to toss a salad already? Yes, please. Okay. Silverware is right there underneath Michelle.
I don't know.
Ooh, came out a little spicy. Hope that's okay. So should I go ahead and cut the bread?
There's a smoked Gouda in there, too.
There's a what?
There's a smoked Gouda.
Whatever you like, Miss Sophia Chang.
There's a line in Voltaire's book called Candid, and it's Il faut cultiver son jardin, which means one must cultivate your garden. And cultivating my garden, part of that was finding my voice.
My name is Sophia Chang, and I'm proud to say that I was raised by Wu-Tang.
I did an audiobook.
I feel more powerful than I've ever felt in my life, and I'm only getting stronger.
There are other books in me. There is a scripted television show. What I am doing with any of these ways that I'm telling my story is I'm out here telling the world in no uncertain terms that I'm the baddest bitch in the room.
I'm very excited and proud about my sister's latest chapter in her life. She seems to be writing it, literally.
I was a yellow girl. I was ashamed. Wu-Tang showed me the beauty of my culture.
Today, my relationship with Sophia, I respect her, I love her. This kind of things never goes away.
I learned the greatest lessons of my life, training in Shaolin Kung Fu and learning Chan Buddhism, all because of this man. I will carry those lessons for the rest of my life. I will train Kung Fu for the rest of my life.
Sophia, always in my heart. And precious lifetime together. Also, we had two remarkable kids.
You know, people always say, how are your kids? And you know what I say? They're good people. They're kind, just, empathetic. They are amazing.
So Buddhism is being present. Just being right here, right now. I am right in here, and I love right here, right now.
I'm so glad that we were able to share and you all were able to see that short. It really sets the stage for a beautifully authentic, honest conversation. The first time I saw it, I loved it. And so one quick housekeeping thing before we get started. Wherever you're watching from right now, know Shalina and Sophia will be able to see anything you throw in the chat. So any thoughts, questions, loving things that are being talked about, feel free to engage and interact that way. And so now on to tonight's guests. Our moderator for the evening is Shalina Ali. Shalina, born and raised in Milwaukee, is a mother, artist, and entrepreneur. Her commitment to helping others and promoting self-care drives her career and serves as a constant motivation in her work. Shalina is the co-executive director of True School, co-created the Circulate Creative Entrepreneur Market, and was awarded Creative Alliance's Creative Problem-Solving Excellence Award for creating the art of coping as a proactive approach to suicide prevention and addressing symptoms of depression. Most recently, Shalina was the 2019 recipient of the non-traditional, commonly known as the Badass, Jackins Award, for her work outside the society-approved or bureaucratic norms. She is a member of the Central City Circle of Change, an emotional and social wellness consulting group, and pursues her passion as a photographer. She specializes in program and staff development, curriculum building, and has worked for over 15 years with organizations like the YMCA, Latino Community Center, Violence Free Zone, and First Time Juvenile Offenders Program. She is committed to her work, challenging and educating others who serve youth and the community. Shalina, if we could bring her on stage, very grateful to have you leading us this evening. And now to introduce Sophia. Obviously, you've learned much about her already, but Sophia Chang is a screenwriter and author who is developing numerous TV properties, including a scripted series at FX based on her Audible memoir, The Baddest Bitch in the Room. Sophia recently created Unlock Her Potential, a program that provides mentorship for women of color. She is the music business matriarch who managed Old Dirty Bastard, RZA, D'Angelo, Raphael Sadiq, Q-Tip, A Tribe Called Quest, as well as working with Paul Simon. She did marketing at Atlantic, A&R at Jive, A&R admin at Universal, as well as serving as general manager of RZA's Razor Sharp Records, Cinematic Music Group, and Joey Pro Era Records. She trained with, as you saw, and managed a Shaolin monk who became her partner and the father of her children. She produced runway shows and was an account executive at a digital agency and did biz development at a cannabis company. A woman of so many paths, so many successes. Bring Sophia to the stage, and I want to welcome you both and just reiterate it. We're very grateful and excited for this conversation.
Thank you, Maureen. And on behalf of True School, Milwaukee's Center for Transformative Creative Arts and Hip Hop Culture, I'm just so honored to have this conversation with you, Ms. Sophia Chang. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you for the introduction, and hi, Shalina. It's lovely to be here.
There was, a lot of buzz around this conversation in the circles of hip hop, but especially in the circles of women as it relates to it being Women's History Month. And so when I originally got offered this opportunity, my mind started going in two different ways, because the hip hopper in me wanted to pick your brain, Wu-Tang industry, and especially as it relates to your women's mentorship and even the role that I play in the industry. But I think I ended up really getting pulled into wanting to have a deep conversation about women. And that happened in sharing this book with 11 different women of color, which I've heard you say, that's who you want to support. That's who you want to really uplift and give a voice to in this book. And so I would like to transition to your first reading, just knowing that a lot of what we're going to talk about was informed by many women that got to read your book.
Okay, thank you. And I hope those 11 women enjoyed the book. So I'm going to start very early in the book, which is it's where I start talking about, it's me really giving context, right, to it gives you context from my life in general, I guess you could say. I hope that it really, I hope that it's clear, and I'm trying to find it on my computer. I had it all pulled up and now I'm sorry, now I can't find it.
We're patient.
Okay. All right. So this is me telling a story about me in 5th grade getting pulled aside by my teacher, whom I thought I was teacher's pet and golden. You know, Sophia, there are a group of parents who have come together against, and for some reason, I was convinced the next word out of her mouth was going to be Asians. But instead she said, people who don't let other friends be friends with certain students. Do you know what I'm talking about? I feigned innocence, but she knew that I knew that she knew. I left the classroom and walked out the double doors, Mrs. Eldon's words ringing in my ears. I swatted the dingy tetherball hanging off the end of a gray fraying rope. As I heard it swinging around the cold metal pole behind me, I thought that the girl's parents must have said something. I felt a mix of indignance, guilt, and humiliation. The next day, the desks were moved, and I was forced to sit next to Janet. It was just the two of us, whereas the other desks were clustered in groups of 4 or 6. And it worked. We ended up becoming friends again. When I look back on that incident, it's amazing that despite being the queen of my school, I thought Mrs. Eldon was going to tell me that a group of parents was conspiring against Asians. I still felt other. And surely my overachieving ambitions were in response to feeling marginalized. Having been called racist names, I understood on some level that a lot of prejudices propagated by the children were passed down to them by their folks. There was racism lurking in the tidy stucco homes behind the white picket fences. One sunny spring day, as I walked alone across Balaclava Park, one of Vancouver's many massive green public green spaces, I was suddenly struck by how empty it was. Typically, there would be people playing rugby in the giant field or running track or kids lolling about in the sandbox. The sprawling emerald meadow meant fun and freedom under open skies, but it was about to become a battleground. I sensed a presence behind me. Where are you from? Reuben, the class bully, a big lurching white boy with dirty blonde hair and a dull rage in his eyes, circled me slowly on his blue Schwinn chopper. He stopped right in front of me, shifting from cheek to cheek on his vinyl banana seat, cutting me off in my tracks. I looked at him and didn't answer. I was caught off guard by his overt hostility. I said, "Where are you from?" "China or Japan?" I was only 9 and had already felt the demeaning sting of thoughtless racist barbs for years. Sometimes, if I was lucky, I would be serenaded with this charming little ditty. Chinese, Japanese, dirty knees, look at these, the kids would sing, using their fingers to slant their eyes up, indicating Chinese, then down, indicating Japanese, putting their hands on their knees, and then for the roaring finale, pulling their shirts out to mimic a big chest. Who the fuck knows where that came from? In addition to being made acutely aware of my difference in ethnicity, I was also constantly reminded of my size. I was short to medium height, but really skinny. The older boys in school used to literally toss me from one to the other like a ball. It was all in fun, but in retrospect, still a clear assertion of physical dominance. People would also hold up my arm in midair and say, "Look how skinny she is. Look how small her wrists are." In the past, I'd kept quiet and responded feebly. Only days before, I had stood silent and helpless while a greasy white teen passed by our house yelling, "Hey, chink, go back to your country," at my dad's back as he tended to the peonies in our garden. I watched as my father ignored the bait and clenched the wooden handle of the spade in his gloved hand. My mercury rose in a tide of rage while my heart sank in a pit of humiliation and heartache. All the chinks, Japs, and gooks carelessly hurtled my way were an indignity, but watching my father be the recipient of such bile irreversibly activated something in me. The difference between my father and me was that I had the most lethal weapon at my disposal, the English language. And this brilliant sunny afternoon in the park was the day that I would unlock the safety. Truth is, in a battle of wits, me against Ruben was like bringing an AK to a plastic knife fight. But I held back on unleashing an automatic, choosing to fire only a couple shots instead. I'm from Korea, I rallied back. What? Korea, your geography is pretty bad if the only countries you know in Asia are China and Japan. Maybe you should study harder in school, Ruben. I could taste the rage in my saliva. He grunted in response. When he realized that he hadn't succeeded in terrorizing me, he got back on his bike and trundled away. I saw Ruben again in school, but there were no more confrontations. Walking home, I was high on victory. I felt indomitable. From this day forward, I felt prepared for any verbal jousting match. My life wasn't a horror show of constant racist attacks and threats, but growing up as the child of Asian immigrants in a white world made it a challenge to establish my identity. My birth certificate says I'm a citizen of Canada, but I didn't feel fully Canadian because I wasn't white. Nor was I totally Korean because I had lost the language, a common experience amongst first-generation immigrants. Hisok, my older brother, too, had lost Korean.
Thank you. That excerpt was really important because for most of us that read, we felt like it gave us a strong foundation as far as who you are, and it said a lot into the rest of the book. We all had different diverse backgrounds. We're in different positions in life right now. But one thing that incited was for all of us to have a conversation about how racism and the pressure to assimilate to whiteness had an impact on us raised by our parents. Like we talked about what kind of impact it had on our parents, how that formed the way that they raised us, and then how that had a lasting impact in our lives. I'm wondering, as a parent now, what do you take with you that your parents instilled in you in those lessons? And what are the things that you felt like it was best to leave behind when it came to raising your children?
So, you know, immigrants of color, and particularly Asian parents, we weren't into public displays of affection. We never said, I love you in my household until my father, God rest his soul, was dying of cancer. There were no Sophia, Hisok, you're the smartest kids in the world. You could grow up to be whatever you want. I mean, from my experience, talking to my friends who are first gen, none of us had those conversations with our parents. And I'm not any the lesser for it. You know, I think that the power of my parents was more in what they didn't say than what they said. Meaning, when I decided to run off to New York City and skip my university graduation, how many first-gen immigrants would skip their university graduation? They never tried to dissuade me. They never told me that was crazy, even though I'm sure it was going through their heads. So they didn't try to hold me back. And I think that they knew that it was probably an exercise in futility to try to stop me. So what do I hold on to? I hold on to, you know, my father used to say, anybody that's raised in Asia is pretty much raised with the combination of Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism. Certainly, I have a strong sense of filial piety. And I consider myself a Buddhist in the sense of being present. I kind of leave behind, leaving behind it sounds unfair to my parents. You know, I am very vocal about how I feel. And they weren't as vocal, but again, as I spoke to in that segment, they didn't have the language. I also tell my kids all the time that I love them. And I tell them all the time how extraordinary they are. Not how smart they are or that they're going to get a great job, but they are good, kind people, like I said. I don't give a shit where my kids go to school. I really, really don't. They care more than I do. I don't care what they do for a job as long as they are passionate about it and as long as they move through the world as good, kind, just people. And I think that we as this generation, I call it almost the in-between generation, right? Like I said, I'm not fully Canadian and I'm not fully Korean. I feel like we sit in this really unique place when it comes to parenthood in particular.
That's dope. Thank you. So when you describe leaving your hometown, we coined it breaking free. Just this idea of being like, you know what, there's something I know and I have to discover it. Are you breaking free from anything right now?
I think I try to break free from many things every day. What does that mean? It means that all of us were raised within a system. So I have internalized the model minority myth. I have internalized racism, sexism, xenophobia, misogyny, transphobia, ableism, all of these terrible, terrible things. And so I'm trying to break free from all of those things all of the time. But I guess that language for me, breaking free implies that you are in chains. Breaking free implies that you are somehow imprisoned. I would never say that about my life. I would say that I have habits that I would like to unlearn. I have notions and prejudices that I would like to deprogram. So other than that, no, there's nothing that I feel like I have to escape.
That's a dope way to put it. And, you know, this one thing we love about hip hop is language and not sticking to just one way to describe something, but to really exploring how something can resonate with you personally. And I think a lot of people would appreciate hearing that notion of the idea of evolving and getting better as it being a lifelong journey versus something that you kind of just land on and then you're there and then you're done. We would love to hear the second excerpt if you're ready.
Sure. The second excerpt is the top of chapter 9. This is me talking about right after my marriage. We weren't formally married, but I call it my marriage. We can call it our union had broken up. Freedom didn't exactly feel like Shawshank. I was faced with the daunting task of pulling my life back together and excavating the identity that I'd allowed to be buried. In one fell swoop, I had lost my husband, my best friend, my co-parent, my business partner, my career, and my professional dream. I never wavered on my decision to leave, but swore that I still loved Yanming. I recalled all the magical moments, the trips, the training, the children. They were real. And then I had a simple, stunning revelation. This isn't love, Sophia. This is nostalgia. I abandoned the hallmark notion that we were meant to be together forever. It's not impossible, but I don't think I have a single soulmate. I believe I have many. And God willing, inshallah, I'll be blessed enough to encounter some of them in this lifetime. I've never stayed long in a relationship, romantic, platonic, professional, that wasn't satisfying. Nor do I trust that love conquers all. I think timing trumps love. When Yanming and I met, it was synchronicity. He needed someone to help grow the temple, and I was ready to train and settle down and have kids. Our needs and desires were in lockstep with each other. However, as we grew, so did we grow apart. I mean, what was the likelihood that we would develop in the same direction at the same rate for the rest of our lives? I've met potentially amazing partners, but we were at such different places in our trajectories that it made a relationship impossible. To my surprise, my family wasn't disappointed that I was leaving Yanming. They were relieved. They'd seen our dysfunction up close. One day, Yeming and I got into a fight. My mother shocked me by saying to him, I used to think it was Sophia's fault that you were fighting all the time. But now I see that it's you, and I don't like the way you're treating my daughter. That was devastatingly out of character and must have taken so much for her to overcome her aversion to confrontation. I had never heard my mother challenge someone like this. Yeming stayed silent. He was ashamed. It didn't change anything, but she had spoken her piece, and I was moved by and proud of her for doing so. When I told Michael that Yeming and I had been reduced to fighting in front of the kids, he looked at me sadly. Michael Austin, whom you saw on the Hulu show. He looked at me sadly without a hint of judgment and said, Soph, is that the model of love you want to provide to your children? A bright light during the dark period appeared on March 17th, 2007, when Hesock married Carrie Goldberg, his former student, a brainy, ballsy, beautiful blonde who had been a caseworker for Holocaust survivors and had just sat for the bar. It was a sunny affair in Palm Springs. Carrie's big, wonderful family filled the sprawling green lawns, along with our little clan, me, my folks, the kids, and even Michelle. But no Yeming. It was the first signal to my family that it was over. Nothing was said. It just was. And it was all good because the children and I were so loved. I would have to be more explicit with the clan about the separation, which I dreaded because they didn't see it coming and were very attached to our union. Riza, naturally, was at the top of my list. On a warm spring evening, we had dinner with Power, one of the clan's executive producers. I kept waiting for an opening in the conversation, like a girl trying to get in on a double Dutch skip. But the opportunity didn't appear, or I was too nervous to seize one. Then came the check and we were out. Damn, I blew it. Luckily, as I was walking Riza to the parking lot, he stopped by a deli for a drink before the long drive home to South Jersey. I followed him to the back of the store. As the large refrigerator door opened and the frosted air escaped, I saw my opening. Rakim, I have to tell you something. What is it, Soph? Here we go. It's over between me and Shaful. I'm leaving. He had just reached for an iced tea and stopped cold, leaving the door half open. He slowly let it close and turned to face me. That can't be true, Soph. I don't believe it. It's true. It's over. It's been bad for a long time. What happened? Nothing. We just grew apart. I'm going to talk to Shaful about it. There's nothing to talk about. I've been trying to make it right for years, but we're at the end of the line. This was a blow to Riza. He was the godfather to our children. Our family spent a lot of time together, and he was very close to each of us.
Thank you. So this is where we bring in the motherfucking Wu-Tang. These are your brothers. That is amazing. But that's what they are. They're your brothers. And I think that, we know Wu-Tang as in, influential in hip hop and somebody that has, or a group that has impacted so many of our lives, but you had a very loving and personal relationship with them. I'm wondering how having these brothers who respected you, loved you, and had your back has shaped or had an impact on your confidence or your ability to be brave, even at times when they weren't around in different areas of your life.
I think all of us have heard of imposter syndrome. And I certainly had imposter syndrome getting into hip hop. I'm a woman, I'm Korean, I'm Canadian, I'm not from New York. And I was welcomed into a world that was not mine, not of my making. And that was a privilege. And so when I was given the job to do A&R, which is essentially the most critical component of a record company because the A&R person is the talent scout, I was elated, but I was also nervous. Like, can I really do this job? And I had already met a bunch of folks in hip hop that had, made me feel more confident about my job. But Wu-Tang Clan claimed me. And I know that some people might bristle at that term, but that's the only way that I can put it. They were like this, oh no, this one, she's ours. We put her in our breast pocket. We carry Sophie with us. Don't fuck with Sophie. She's ours. And I was fully on board, and they were mine. And I hope what comes through, Shalina, in my memoir, what I tried to show people was the human side of the guys. A side that nobody's ever seen, because it's a side, frankly, that I don't know that anybody but Sophia Chang gets. And what I also hope that people glean from that, it's not just that I'm extraordinary to receive the love. It's that they're extraordinary to give it to me. And that's really, really important. And being in a world that is so male-dominated, sexist, misogynist, that regularly objectifies women, and never to be seen that way, and to be treated like a queen, you know? Yes. Here's your throne and sit down. You know, I remember going to a studio once, I think it was Firehouse Studios, and it was crowded, and there were all these people in there, and every seat was filled, the couches were filled, and people were standing, and I walked in, and it's, you know, filled with weed smoke, which I can't fucking stand. And Meth is writing in one of his black and white composition notebooks. And he looks up and he sees me. And he yells at everybody, yo, that's Sophie Chang. What do you motherfuckers get up? And she sits down. Don't you make Sophie Chang stand. Get up and give her your seat. And so that it was that kind of demonstrative love. And nobody does that better than Meth. That set the tone for everybody else in what I call the Wooniverse. And that was deeply meaningful to me, because I walked, and I still walk, with Wu-Tang in my heart. You know, they literally, they protect my neck. And it's a feeling that is deeply empowering. And, you know, one time I was going to call my memoir Raised by Wu-Tang. Right. And I mean that with everything that I have. They were and remain deeply, deeply important to my life and inform how I move.
I think it is so important what you just did, because you acknowledged the sexist ways that we can experience men in unhealthy experiences. And in the same or the following breath, we're talking about this beautiful, healthy brotherhood. And I think women need to hear more stories about that. And you definitely did a great job of
thank you
humanizing them. And we felt the love in the story, and it was consistent, and it was over and over again. And I couldn't help but think, like, this has to have some level of impact on your ability to walk into a room and be the baddest bitch.
No question.
We can leave that there, right? Hands down. I want to acknowledge your brother as well, though, your biological brother, Hisak.
Yes.
He seemed to have a really loving role in your life as well. I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Yes. You know, loving, you know, he's my older brother. My older brother used to drive me crazy. And for those of you that haven't read the memoir, if I didn't say it, my brother is the 10 smartest people in the world. I have lived in my brother's intellectual and academic shadow from the gate. And the way that we love each other, again, is very, I would say, very Asian, right? It's not like, I love you and big hugs and everything. It's just, you know, we do it. My girlfriend, Beth Ann Hardison, said, Soph, family is a verb. So it's not just what you say. It's really about what you do. What are the actions that you take to exhibit your love? How does that manifest? And yes, he is, you know, he's incredibly, we talk all the time. And, you know, my brother is, there was a show called Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And when it first came out, you know, the internet and smartphones and everything weren't so readily available. And so you had three options. One, you could ask the audience. I can't remember the other one. And then another one was phone a friend. My brother, Heesok, was everybody's phone a friend. If I get on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, I'm fucking calling your brother. He's like that. And yes, there is a tremendous amount of love between us.
So I just want to switch gears a little bit and talk about Yang Ming.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to the part of the book where you're describing the experience and exploration of love and what that evolved to, it was like almost a part of your book where everybody relaxed, where I relaxed. Forget it. I'll talk about me. I relaxed. I read this love story and I was so into it. And then, bam, we started getting into things becoming difficult, which eventually led to the breakup. But in that breakup, you had to leave so much. There was love. There was a way of living, your means, also walking away from something that you really helped. It became what it was because a piece of you was in it.
Yes.
Do you deal with all that at one time? Did you have to compartmentalize that? I'm wondering how you got through that.
Oh, Shalina, you get through it because what's the option? What's the option? Stop? Stop what though? Stop living? Stop waking up every day? Stop going hard for your kids? Stop experiencing joy? Stop loving? Stop communing with your village? I got through it because there was simply no option. It's not like you sit there and go, okay, I can either get through it or I can't. I can just lie in bed all day and weep and never get out of bed and just let the pizza boxes and the takeout containers. I think that might be the case for some people, but it's not for me. You know, I'm fortunate enough I do not suffer from mental illness. I'm not clinically depressed. So for me, it just wasn't something that I thought about. And I think what you gather from my memoir is that there are many, I talk about it, that I've had many comings of age. And with each stage and each change and each flip and each career switch and each tangential path that I went down, I never thought that hard about any of it because I followed my heart and my spirit and my soul and my passion. And here is a privilege, right? But yes, I walked away from a lot. And I knew that I had to. I knew that it was untenable. I don't love anything more than I love me, except for my children. But even so, I have to take care of me. Sophia Chang has to take care of Sophia Chang. Nobody can do that better than me.
Right.
Because I have so many people to take care of, primarily my children.
I mean.
And so you get up and you keep it pushing.
Y'all hear that? I know some ears got real close to the speaker on this response. And I think it was a valuable one. I thank you, Sophia.
Of course.
Let's move on to the very last excerpt.
Okay. So this is the closing. The current chapter of my life is proclaiming to be the baddest bitch in the room. The concept came to me more than a decade ago when I attended the second annual Black Girls Rock Awards show. The organization was founded by DJ turned philanthropist Beverly Bond to celebrate and empower magical Black girls. That night, I was in the company of three such exceptional creatures: Beth Ann Hardison, Joan Morgan, and Sam Martin, my friend at HBO, who had bought my screenplay. When we left the event, I ran down the stairs in front of the others to capture the picture of these three women gliding down the staircase like royalty. Beth Ann with her closely cropped salt and pepper hair wearing a brightly colored African print dress. Joan in a sage raw silk empire waist dress, and Sam in a fawn-colored Barney's cotton dress. As I took photo after photo, it occurred to me that my girls were the baddest bitches in the room. It may sound competitive, but it isn't. It's not about looking antagonistically at other women, but claiming our power and beauty as women who are almost exclusively of color and over 40 and 50, in a world where we are given little to no indication that we are powerful and beautiful. There could be prettier, richer, younger, more accomplished women in the room, but those aren't the quality that grant membership into the Baddest Bitch Club. It's the extraordinary aggregate of our strengths that constitutes our power. And part of being the baddest bitch in the room is owning it. If you truly believe it, that energy emanates from you when you walk into a room. My hope is that someday every woman will feel as mightily about herself as we do. I enter every space as if I'm 6 feet tall. I am heightened by my confidence, desire to stand out, and unique style, which I've spent a lifetime honing as a response to feeling invisible. I'm aware of the genetic privilege I enjoy, my father's razor-sharp cheekbones, and my mother's hummingbird metabolism. And I know that this playing field is not level, that quote-unquote beauty is capital, as Joan would say. As a woman, I use every tool in my arsenal to get my foot in the door and a seat at the table. But here's the hitch. Once I'm there, my goal is to have everyone saying, fuck, she's smart, as opposed to, damn, she's hot. Truth is, they say both. Furthermore, I haven't kicked down doors to let them close behind me. I keep them open and bring my folks in with me. That's how we do. Many men have told me that they were initially scared to talk to me. They should be. My confidence serves as a filter. If you're too shook to approach me or think I'm out of your league, you're probably right, because you lost the second you doubted yourself. Having been the little Asian girl who was bullied, I delighted in the idea that I scare people. And if you had told the scrawny 10-year-old who was embarrassed to do push-ups in front of her gym class that she would be considered physically formidable and at her most powerful at 55, she would have called you crazy. I've reached the point where training is an integral part of my life, as integral a part of my life as eating and sleeping, such that it's harder not to do it than to do it. I have to take care of myself so I'm in the best shape possible for my kids and the others in my life, for whom I wage tiny battles every day. But I didn't get here on my own. I wouldn't have the moxie or muscle or the motivation to do what I do if I wasn't embraced, emboldened, and empowered by the motherfucking village that raised me. My ride or die stand by me when I'm faltering, embrace me when I'm hurting, toss me onto their shoulders when I'm celebrating, talk me off the ledge when I'm about to lose my shit, and pull me aside when I'm fucking up. They are my pillars, my shields, and my mirrors who challenge me every day to be a better person. And I discovered what it truly means when I say my name is Sophia Chang and I was raised by Wu-Tang. The clan provided me with life-changing first. Method Man was the first person to call me family and open my imagination to what family could look like. ODB, God rest his soul, was the first person to hire me as a manager, and RZA was the first to empower me as a general manager of a label. If it wasn't for Wu-Tang, I wouldn't have discovered the power and beauty of my Asian heritage. I wouldn't have trained in Kung Fu. I wouldn't have met the man who would become my mighty love. And most important, I wouldn't have these two extraordinary children who are my greatest legacy.
That was my favorite one. And I loved hearing you read it more, I think, than myself reading it. I want to just take a moment on that note and acknowledge the women who read with me: Lila Weatheroff, Fabiana Guzman, Lisette Whitaker, Lauren Feaster, aka DJ Lolo, Chantel McKenzie, Imani Ray, Jennifer Reed, Amanda, Tasia, Joanna. I thank you all. And I just want to end this by saying, how does having healthy relationships with women in your life contribute to being the baddest bitch in the room?
In every way. It is so important. I do think that there is something about patriarchy that pitches women against each other and makes us competitive at the most banal and superficial level. You know, the women in my life are the ones who talk me off the ledge. You know, I'll call them up and say, yo, this shit just happened. Am I bugging? Like, do I go for the throat? Like, do I tear this motherfucker down? And they'll be like, so calm down, calm down. But they're also there when I'm sad. They're also there, you know, they're there for every stage and for the big moments and the small moments. And there are some men like that in my life, but it's very different for me to commune with women, especially other women. And talking to them about knowing that I have a space to talk about everything and that I create that space in return makes this fantastic environment in which we can flourish and grow and be weak and be vulnerable and be sad, but also be powerful and strong and vibrant and luminous and stelliferous. So I, you know, when I talk about the motherfucking village that raised Sophia Chang, the most robust pillars of that village are Black women, Black feminists.
I mean, thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I
Thank
hope
you everybody for being here.
Absolutely, thank you everybody, and I hope as you guys were
Go
listening,
buy my book,
that you were encouraged to read this book. They were strong snippets, but I promise you, they were just snippets, and there is so much in between. Thank you, Sophia Chang. Thank you, Black Women's, and thank you for everybody that joined us. True School.
Take care, everybody.
This is our first robust month-long celebration of Women's History Month. We have over 30 films, feature films and short films, returning favorites, brand new films, and 6 events featuring local and national luminaries, women that are leading the charge in activism, business, empowerment, arts, and culture. Viewers can access the Women's History Month programming through our app, which is available on a number of different platforms that you can watch on your TV, on your computer, on your tablet. What this is a celebration of women in all of their diversity, looking at their successes, their victories, but also focusing on the work that still needs to be done, the challenges that are facing women today.